Hello and welcome to LA Rams Central. Yet another episode. This is the 15th. I do plan on having this room renovated by the next time you guys see me. I'm going to probably redo that whole back wall. I've got a setup in mind that I'm probably going to do that might be a little cooler. Um, but I want to talk a little bit this week about a couple of things. And my show this week may be a bit more lengthy than normal. I'm going to still try to keep it under 45 minutes, but I'm not going to make any promises because there's a lot to cover. The first thing that I want to talk about is the Rams rookie minicamp. Everything that I'm hearing from the Rams websites to Jeff Fisher to the NFL Network to ESPN to blogs that I'm reading, even to local news stations out in LA, the rookie camp went surprisingly well. Jared Goff was picking up a lot of the stuff. Higbee was looking pretty good with a lot of his catches, and Pharoh Cooper is better, according to what I'm hearing. People think he is actually better than they had originally anticipated. So that is all great news, obviously, for us here in the Ramily. So camp was good. No one really got injured. Nothing major to announce. Relatively unscathed. Now we go into OTAs and hopefully that goes well. No word on Dante Whitner, although I did read that the Rams are probably going to wait until the transition period is over, so there's no compensation loss or compensation picks that would come their way. So probably in the next day or two, and I'm filming this on Wednesday, even though this will be posted on Saturday, so there could be a signing between now and then. If there is, I'm not going to consider that breaking news because I'm actually expecting Dante Whitner to sign. And anybody else that they sign, I'm anticipating is going to be signed Thursday or Friday anyway. So I'll do that on the following week's show. Just keep that in mind. Couple other names I want to throw at you is Anquan Boldin, a potential wide receiver that they may sign and go after. He's the Ram killer, so I certainly would prefer him to go to the Rams and go back to the Cardinals or even San Francisco, or Seattle. So I'd love to see Anquan Boldin in a Ram uniform, even though he's kind of at the end of his career. He's still a big enough target and enough of a threat and a 50-50 winner. And what I mean by 50-50 winner guys are guys that can go up and get those 50-50 balls where it's either going to be 50% chance the offense will get it, 50% chance the defense will get it. He wins a lot of those battles. Even at his age, he's still a big enough target that he can do that. So I'm looking forward to that. I heard an interesting thing on Kevin Hardy. I'm not a Kevin Hardy fan. I don't like him. I don't want him. But I'm not going to sit here and be stupid. If the Rams sign him, he's a good player, and he will definitely contribute on that Ram defensive line tremendously. And based on who the Rams usually try to get, they're not exactly the well, let's face it, they become the modern day Oakland Raiders. They go get the guys that many people consider thugs and hoodlums and bring them in. And, that's the way it goes. I mean, yeah, we went after Janoris Jenkins. We got that guy from New England on the practice squad, and apparently he made the team. So getting a Kevin Hardy wouldn't be a surprise. Again, I would be mixed on my emotions. I would be disappointed that the Rams went that way, but I would be excited because knowing that he would be teaming with Robert Quinn and Aaron Donald and Brockers, it would be pretty sick, provided he can stay out of jail. Speaking of jail, TJ McDonald is probably going to be suspended for a game or two. The assassin, unfortunately, got busted for a DUI, driving while under the influence, and it was not alcohol, which means it was probably a drug of some kind, which means at least a 2 to 3 game suspension. I believe it's his first offense, so it might even be a 1 to 2 game suspension for a first offense. I like TJ. I'm not sure why he did what he did, but he did what he did. So, now the Rams are really going to need some of those younger guys to step up, and they're really going to have to. Now they're going to get Dante Whitner, because if there's a chance they're going to lose TJ, they're going to need somebody there to fill the void for a couple of weeks. And that hurts because if it is 2 games, it would be 2 division games against San Francisco and Seattle. So, it is what it is. We earned it. You don't do those things and expect not to get penalized, and he absolutely should be penalized. But that's basically it on the Ram news. I'm going to wrap up with the Rams here at the end of the show, but I want to jump into my draft grades because everyone seems to be doing this, and I feel like it's a good time to do it. So I'm going to start with the NFC East. I'm going to go through each team, and then I'm going to give a grade. This may be pretty quick. If you're a fan of one of these teams, hear what I have to say and either agree or disagree, and make your comment in the bottom there. As far as the Redskins go, looking at their draft, there was a lot of things that I liked. There was some things that I think they needed to address, and I thought they did. I ended up giving the Redskins a B+. They didn't get all their needs addressed, but they did get 3 major needs addressed in the draft. Wide receiver was a big concern, and they got that with Josh Doxson. He's going to be of the future. Big pickup. In the second round, they got Sua Carvins from USC, a linebacker that they desperately needed. And I like the 7th round pick, Stephen Daniels from BC. I highlighted him because I think that's a great value pick in the 7th round. That's a 5th round guy that they picked up in the 4th round, or in the 7th round. But that's how deep this draft was. I actually think Mr. Irrelevant could be a starter one day because, again, defense was just that deep. The Dallas Cowboys, I think they addressed all their needs, and they took a fly on Dak. I don't think Dak Prescott's going to be anything but another Quincy Carter, but I'm not commenting on this draft about Dak Prescott. I gave him an A+ because you draft Ezekiel Elliott, who is better than DeMarco Murray, and DeMarco Murray I'm a big, big fan of. You've just put yourself in a position between that offensive line, that wide receiver, obviously we're talking about Dez Bryant, but their wide receivers and the quarterback Tony Romo, if he could stay healthy. They have a running game now like they've never had. I gave Dallas an A+, because then in the second round they went and got Jalen Smith from Notre Dame. But then in the 4th round they got Charles Tapper, a defensive end from Oklahoma, who I think is a great football player that is every bit as good in situational pass rushes that Joey Bosa is. So if they use him properly, that could really be an asset. The New York Giants, I gave a B. They didn't get an O-line that was desperately needed. They took too many flyers in the late rounds, but overall, when you're able to get the best defensive back in the draft, and he's the 3rd one selected, I thought the Giants were brilliant in getting Eli Apple instead of Jackson the 3rd, or I don't think they would have drafted him if one of those other 2, Hargreaves or the other guy, were on the board. But I think Eli Apple in the end is going to be the best of the bunch, and I thought that was a great pick by the Giants, and I think that alone warranted a B, but I think they did address other needs as well. The Eagles, I gave a D-. Love the Carson Wentz pick, you guys know that, but why? You now have 3 quarterbacks on your roster, all in which are going to be paid easily close to $20 million. That's $60 million between the 3 quarterbacks combined, yet you addressed no other position of need. Wentz isn't ready to play, and he won't play, according to Philadelphia, at all this season. You've got Sam Bradford, who is, at the very best, he's capable of holding a clipboard, and even then I think he might blow an ACL. So, you've got a bad starting quarterback, you've got a bad backup quarterback, and you've got a guy who isn't ready as your 3rd string. Meanwhile, you still don't have a strong offensive line. You still don't have a running game. You still don't have wide receivers. Your defense is weak. They've shown that over the last few years. They're not in great shape. Good luck, Philly. D-, you earned it. Because of that D-, it brings the grade of the division down from a B to a C+. Overall, I think the NFC East did well. Certain teams in the division did, but I think overall as a division, I think they did very poorly. Or I think they did relatively well with the exception of one team dragging them down. So a C+ is pretty high grade and high praise. I think the NFC East is going to be a beast of a division once again down the road, with Philadelphia being the doormat that everyone is used to seeing. Sorry, Eagle fans. The NFC North, I gave the Bears a B. Upgraded the defense with depth, got good talent overall, but needs to be developed. Their 1st rounder, Leonard Floyd, the outside linebacker from Georgia, they may start him right now, but I don't think he's starting capability. But there he is. Jordan Howard, the free safety DB from William Mary in the 6th round. I love that pick. That kid's going to start by midseason. He's going to be a starter. And he's going to easily be one of their better DBs in their rotation for years to come. So, love that pick. Gave him a B. The Lions impressed me. I gave them an A+. They drafted starter talent in 4 of the first 5 rounds. The first round, they got Tyler Decker from Ohio State, a tackle. They got Ashawn Robinson for a defensive tackle from Alabama. In the 4th round, they got Miles Killebrew, the strong safety DB from Southern Utah, who is a stud. He's tall, he's lanky, and he can cover. And in the 5th round, they got Joe Daw, the guard from Washington State, who's a starter. I think they can put him in right away. So they got a guard and a tackle in the lineup right off the bat out of this draft. So I tip my hat to Detroit. I think they did well. They're a few years away, and they're going to need a couple more drafts like this, but definitely a good pick. The Green Bay Packers, I gave a C+. They missed out on drafting the tight end Henry, and they missed out on a solid DB. They had opportunities in each round. Kenny Clark, the D tackle from UCLA, I don't know how good he's going to be. I don't think he's going to be that great. And then you got the 2nd rounder, Jason Spriggs from Indiana, which I thought was a great pickup. To be able to find him in the 2nd round, that was a gem. And that's going to help their O-line. It's going to help them right now, which is why I gave them a C+. There isn't anything about their draft that I liked except the Jason Spriggs pick. But when you can put a guy in a lineup right now and make you an instant division winner, I think you got to give them credit where credit's due. They got the quarterback still. They have the defense. So, you take a flyer in the 1st round and then you happen to get a guy like Jason Spriggs. I think that was huge. So, kudos to Green Bay in that one pick. But I think overall they butchered it. The Vikings, everyone's high on Minnesota's draft. And I'm looking at it going, really? Great 1st round and then absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. They got Laquan Treadwell, wide receiver from Mississippi. And then everybody else they got are developmental players and backups at best that will turn out to be backups. I think. In the end, I could be totally wrong, as I was with the draft. But I don't agree with what they drafted. That hurt the division. And overall, the division ended up with a solid C. 75, if you will. They got work to do, but I think overall the division is still going to be what the division's been, which is a relatively weak division. The NFC South. I'll start with Carolina. I gave them an F. Not a starter in the bunch. They have potential, and they have a potential Josh Norman, but like Norman, will take time to develop. That's what I wrote on the 2nd round pick, James Bradbury, the defensive back from Sanford. I like the kid from Sanford. I think he's going to be a good DB, but it's going to take 2 or 3 years for him to come into his own, much like a Josh Norman. In the meantime, they're not going to see any returns on that dividend this year or next year, and potentially not until year 3 or maybe even year 4 if they're willing to stick with him that long. So I don't know what the Carolina Panthers were doing in this draft. They did not address any of their needs. They drafted some of them, but there's too many needs left open. And between that and free agency, I'm scratching my head. A team that was the luckiest 15-1 team in NFL history, the weakest 15-1 team in NFL history, is now going to have to deal with the ramifications of having to prove it without any significant upgrades. That's going to hurt. The Saints, I gave a C. They did not address a lot of their needs, particularly for me, a backup quarterback behind Drew Brees. They had an opportunity to get Paxton Lynch in the 1st round, and they did not. Instead, they drafted Sheldon Rankins, a defensive tackle out of Louisville, who I think was a 2nd rounder. They could have gotten him in the 2nd round and gotten Paxton Lynch in the 1st and called it a day. But they did get a lot of talent because I do think Sheldon Rankins is a talent, but I think he's a 2nd round talent. Michael Thomas, the wide receiver from Ohio State, a lot of people had him as the number 1 wide receiver for a while, and then he fell off the wagon. We'll see how he does. But the Von Bell free safety from Ohio State pickup that they got with the Patriots draft pick, that was money in the bank, and I loved that pick. So we'll see what the Saints do. I did give them a C because I just think there were too many holes they didn't answer. The Falcons, in the meantime, guys, I gave the Atlanta Falcons an A. They had so many needs to address that missing one is understandable. What they drafted was awesome, though. Starters in the first 4 rounds. I mean, listen to this. They get Keanu Neal, the strong safety from Florida. In the second round, they get Deion Jones, the outside linebacker from LSU. In the third round, they get Houston Hooper, the tight end from Stanford. And in the fourth round, they get Devondre Campbell, the outside linebacker from Minnesota. All those guys are starters. They're capable of starting, and they're going to upgrade that defense. Now, they already have talent at the linebacking core, so those guys are going to be more depth purposes, but they're going to have a good rotational linebackers to bring in. And I think their future looks pretty good. So I really liked Atlanta's draft, and I gave them an A. The Buccaneers got an F. Just a flat-out F. What are they doing? A great first-round pick, as expected. I and all the experts had them getting Hargreaves. But outside of what have they done? I'm not going to sit here and call Mariota and the kid in Tampa Bay, can't remember his name now, I'm totally spacing, the next great quarterbacks. Let's all remember what RG3 did his rookie year. How did year 2 go? How did year 3 go? Not so good. So to sit there and go, well, they got their quarterback, they're good. It's a good thing they have Glennon still. They better not trade him. Because if this guy falls on his face in year 2 and ends up as the next RG3, they got somebody to put in that can help them. But man, if I'm a Buccaneer fan, I'm mad because they did nothing. Outside of the first round, they did nothing. So that hurt the division, and they got the worst grade of any of the divisions. I actually ended up giving that division a D. Sorry, NFC South, but you got a D. I'll wrap up the NFC with this. The NFC West, the Arizona Cardinals. I gave a D to. I know a lot of people are high on Arizona, but they never fully addressed all their needs. With how deep the draft was, why not go quarterback in the first round and D-line in the third, or package some picks for 2 third-rounders, or even a second-round pick? I hate the first-round pick. He has high potential, does Robert Nkemdiche, but he also has high risk. And just because you won Russian roulette once, Arizona, with Matthew, the safety from LSU, doesn't mean it's going to happen twice. There's no formula here, okay? If Nkemdiche is an idiot, he's an idiot. And you can have the best system in place for him, but if he doesn't do his end of the part, I hate the pick. I hate the pick. You had Paxton Lynch, you had other people that were available, and yet you went with the most preposterous pick because everybody said he was such a great talent. And this is why, NFL, you suck. Because you take chances on these guys and prop them up, and then you've got guys like Tim Tebow that all they do is win and produce. You may not like their numbers, but they win and produce, and you squish them down and hold them out while you prop these other guys up. Kevin Hardy was hailed when he went back to Dallas. Oh, he served a suspension. He's good. Until the video was released on Ray Rice, nobody was talking about his violent issue. And in a time right now where everyone's sensitive to the violence within the NFL, why are you promoting people like Nkemdiche in the first round? Why? I don't care if the guy can do it. If the guy can do it for 16 games and then he's going to be in jail for the next 25 years, that's not a good reward for me. I got one good season out of a first-round pick when there were other guys out there to get. I hate the pick. I can't stress enough how much I hate that pick. If it's a third-round pick, I'm great with it. I give the Cardinals high praise. What a decision. Because in the end, it's a third-round pick. And if you got to cut it loose, you got to cut it loose. But what made the 49ers so great in the 80s, what made the Steelers so great for all those decades, what made Dallas so great for all those decades, is they didn't miss first-round picks. Hell, sometimes they didn't miss third and fifth-round picks. But you can't take that kind of risk in today's football for a guy like that. I hope for his sake he pans out and everything works out like Matthew. But, again, you won Russian roulette once. You're stupid for playing it twice. Which brings me to my Rams. Our Rams. I gave the Rams an A, and I'll tell you why. They addressed the offensive side of the ball, and with Whitner on the horizon, no safety was needed. So I would have liked to see them get a DB in this draft. There was plenty to go after. I was a little disappointed that they didn't do that. But when you look at their first-round pick with Jared Goff, obviously we know how great that hopefully will turn out. In the end, we don't know, but Goff is certainly capable with the talent around him to win right now like Matt Ryan was. In the 4th round, we got Tyler Higbee, a tight end from Western Kentucky. Same concept, okay? Here's a guy that got arrested. The Rams didn't draft him in the 1st round. They didn't draft him in the 2nd or the 3rd round. Not that they had any one of those picks. But they did draft him in the 4th. And I remind you, the difference between Nkemdiche and Higbee is Higbee pushed a guy to the curb who was molesting his girlfriend and groping her and harassing him. They had left the bar. The guy followed them to another bar. He's old enough to drink, and then groped his girlfriend, so he shoved him to the ground. He's going to be exonerated from those charges. I'm almost 100% convinced of it. So it's not even really a high risk in getting that guy. And he is, I think, better than Hunter Henry on the offensive side of the ball. As far as run blocking, he's nowhere near as good as Hunter Henry, but he can do everything else better. And the Pharoh Cooper, South Carolina pick. This is where we should have selected Tavon Austin a few years ago. Tavon Austin is a 4th-round talent who has big play potential. So you want to know what Tavon Austin should play like? Watch Pharoh Cooper this year, because he's going to outshine and outperform Tavon, and he is going to easily be the most explosive wide receiver in our roster unless we go get Anquan Boldin. I love the pick. The 49ers, I gave an F. I have no idea what San Fran is doing, but then again, after firing Harbaugh, who does? DeForest Buckner, defensive end from Oregon, and then traded back into the 1st round and got the guard from Stanford. Seahawks, C+. I like the first 2 picks. After that, it really does tail off. Jermaine Ifedi, the guard out of Texas A&M, and Jaron Reed, the defense tackle from Alabama. Great job. Great performance. Great pickup. But then after that, it kind of... So they're going to have some work to do in the next couple of years, but I think they got themselves a solid offensive lineman of the future who will take time to groom, and I think they got themselves a great defensive tackle that's only going to continue to improve their defensive line, which is scary to think about being a Ram fan. Overall, though, the division grade was a D+. San Francisco and Arizona brought it down, and I just don't think the division as a whole is going to stay on top much longer with drafts like this, although the Rams are certainly ascending, and Seattle is staying pat. I think we're seeing a little bit of a decline in Arizona and total failure from the 49ers. But the NFC West, I did give their overall grade a D+. That wraps up the NFC. All right, so I'm going to jump into the AFC next. The AFC East, a couple things that I want to go over here. The Buffalo Bills, I gave an A+ to. They addressed all of their needs on defense and offense. O-line was not a major need. They got good special teams tacklers in Seymour and Ragland if he doesn't start. But when you look at what they got in the 1st round, defensive end Shaq Lawson. In the 2nd round, they got Reggie Ragland, an inside linebacker from Alabama who should have been a mid-first round pick. The guy's the best linebacker. I don't know where all of a sudden Jalen Smith and Miles Jack came from. As good as they were, no one anchored the middle better than Reggie Ragland. And Reggie Ragland was just sitting there in the 2nd round. And I'm like, why? Yeah, Reggie Ragland's the best linebacker in this draft and will be remembered as such. Adolphus Washington, defense tackle out of Ohio State, they got in the 3rd round. So it really improved their football team as a whole. And I gave Buffalo an A+ because of it. The Miami Dolphins, I also gave an A+ to. D-line was addressed in free agency. They really maxed out the guys with the positions they needed filled. And what I mean by maxed out is they need an offensive lineman. They got Laramie Tunsil, the best offensive lineman in the draft out of Mississippi. He's a guaranteed starter. In the 2nd round, they got Xavier Howard, a DB out of Baylor, who I think was one of the 4th or 5th best DBs in this draft. They get him in the 2nd round. He's a guaranteed starter. In the 3rd round, they got Kenyon Drake, a tailback out of Alabama. I think he's an eventual starter at tailback, and I think in the 3rd round, he was the best back on the board that was available. He's fast, he's lightning quick, and with that football team, I think Miami all the way around might have just made themselves not just relevant, but back in the conversation. The New England Patriots, I gave a D to. The brain trust is breaking down. No one standout guy, but Jacoby Brissett has a ton of potential. The quarterback out of North Carolina State does have a ton of potential. I think he could be another Steve Grogan type. He's not a Tom Brady. He's not a Joe Montana. He's going to be like a Steve Grogan. You want a modern quarterback, I'll give you a modern quarterback. He's going to be a guy like a... I'm trying to think. Jay Cutler. Not the arm of Jay Cutler, but the win percentage of Jay Cutler. You can win with him, but you need to put pieces around him. And we'll see if New England can do that. They're used to just winning because their quarterback's on the field. That's not going to be the case with Jacoby, but if they put the right guys around him, he could be pretty good. But that's the only guy that stood out. I give him a D. I don't think they did well in this draft at all. Maybe that's why for years they've been trading picks and accumulating other people's talent, because they're really not that great at drafting as a whole, or at least haven't been for the last couple of years. The Jets I gave an F to. Did they even study the draft? Seriously. No quality at all. Jets are hoping for surprises in every pick, in every round. Good luck. The 5th round pick, they got Brandon Shell, a tackle out of South Carolina. That's my highlight for the Jets draft. Division grade, a C-. I thought the AFC East outside of Buffalo and Miami really punted the football here. In the AFC North, let's talk about the Ravens, a team that's not used to drafting high. I gave them a B+. I would have liked to see them get a linebacker, go to them late in the 3rd round, but solid picks otherwise. 1st round, they got Ronnie Stanley, the tackle out of Notre Dame, who I think is going to be a good tackle. In the 2nd round, they got Camelia Correa, defensive end for Boise State, who I think is going to be a nice understudy behind Terrell Suggs. I know Suggs is a linebacker, but he could teach him some DN play as well, and maybe even make that transition to linebacker. And then, of course, Maurice Kennedy, the defensive back from Virginia, who they also could use at safety if they needed to. He's kind of a versatile player, so I really like their 6th round pick. And I think that that's going to be a big player for them eventually. The Bengals I gave an A+ to. Cincinnati hit every need and got a starter talent through round 5. And again, a starter in round 7. And here's what I'm looking at. In the 1st round, they got William Jackson III, the DB out of Houston. A lot of people had him as the 3rd best DB in the draft. And the Bengals got him. And a lot of people thought he was going to go to Pittsburgh, which I'll address that in a minute. In the 3rd round, they got Nick Vigil, the inside linebacker of Utah State. I think that kid's a talent. I think he's going to be a starter, and definitely he's going to end up being better than Burfett, whatever. I can't say his name. And I went to ASU. I think he's going to end up being, he's not only going to be more of a trustworthy linebacker in between the whistles, or after the whistles, but in between the whistles, he's going to be almost as good, but I don't think he's going to be as talented. In the 5th round, they got Christian Westerman, the guard out of Arizona State. I think he'll start. I think he's that good. I think he's that kind of a talent. So kudos to them. The Browns, I gave a D to. All those picks and few hits. Now, time will tell, but Corey Coleman in the 1st round is a potential bust. No real solid picks until round 3. And in round 3, they got Sean Coleman, the tackle out of Auburn, and Cody Kessler, the quarterback out of USC, which I think could be the steal of the draft. I think people are going to look back at this draft and go, Cody Kessler, who would have thought he would have been the 2nd best quarterback in this draft? Everyone thought for sure it was going to be Carson Wentz or maybe Paxton Lynch, but it's Jared Goff and Cody Kessler. I believe that. But the Browns are going to have to build around it, and he's going to need a lot of help to get there. But he has easily got a ceiling that will never quit. He's a gutty kid, and I like him. But that's about all I can say about Cleveland. I gave him a D because other than that quarterback and that tackle, I didn't like anything they did, especially when you blow your 1st round pick. The Steelers I gave a D- to, and that's because of what the Bengals did to them. They reached in round 1 and proved it by reaching again in round 2. Cincinnati threw them off when they went after Jackson III. No real standouts. Here, just a couple of okay picks. If they really liked their 1st round pick, the defensive back out of Maryland, Sean Davis, wouldn't have been picked up. They wouldn't have gone after him. They would have said, no, we got our DB, we're good, we're moving on, we're going to address another need. In the 7th round, they got Tyler Matkevich, the outside linebacker out of Temple. I like that pick. He's going to be a great linebacker, a solid tackler, and that's probably the only reason I didn't give him an F is because of that pick right there. And I actually think it's going to be funny that Sean Davis, the undecided or the proof that they were reaching in the first round with the kid from Miami, I think he's going to actually be a better DB, but I don't think he's going to be anywhere near the talent that Jackson III was going to be, which really screwed their whole draft board up when he went. And I think the Steelers panicked. And I think I'm almost certain they panicked because to go after Sean Davis in the next round showed me that they panicked. Next, we'll go to the AFC South. The Texans. I gave them an A+. Picked up a great scat back in the 4th round. Picked up both the best wide receiver and safety for their system. Not the best in the league, but the best for the systems that they run. High potential wide receiver in the 3rd round as well. So the 1st round, they get Will Fuller out of Notre Dame. Fits their system perfectly. In the 2nd round, they got Nick Martin, the guard from Notre Dame. Great blocker, going to help their running game. In the 3rd round, they got Braxton Miller, the wide receiver from Ohio State, that I think is better than Michael Thomas. And I think he fits their system great and has high potential. And the 5th round, K.J. Dillon, the safety out of West Virginia, fits their system perfectly. So I really like what the Texans did. The Colts I gave a B+ to. Best O-lineman in the draft in over 30 years. Great value in rounds 2 through 4. They needed a DB and never addressed it, which is why I didn't give him an A. But they got Ryan Kelly, the center out of Alabama, who I think is going to go down as the best offensive lineman drafted since the 80s, Anthony Munoz. And the best center drafted since Mike Webster. In the 2nd round, they got T.J. Green, the free safety from Clemson. I like that pickup. He's a good tackler. He'll help their defense. And in the 4th round, they got Antonio Morrison, the inside linebacker from Florida. Again, I like that pick. I think it'll help them depth-wise. So the Colts did well. They got a B+. The Jacksonville Jaguars, man, I gave them an A. Best linebacker, DB, and 3rd-tier defensive tackle in this year's draft. They didn't address 2 positions of need, which prevents them from being an A+, but they are an A rating. 1st round, Jalen Ramsey, DB from Florida State, arguably the best DB on the board. Myles Jack, outside linebacker, UCLA, arguably the best outside linebacker in this year's draft. In the 3rd round, they got Yannick, I can't say his name, I never could, Noggenhouse, the defensive end out of Maryland. I follow Maryland football because of my wife. He's easily the best 3rd-tier defensive lineman in this year's draft, or 2nd-tier defensive end. If you go by tiers, there were 3 guys that were really in the 1st tier, and there were 3 guys in the 2nd tier, and I think Yannick was in the 1st or 2nd tier, number 2, number 3 in that tier, but still in that 2nd tier. So great picks there. Overall, Jacksonville killed it. The Titans, though, I think killed it as well. And the Titans I gave an A+ to. Despite getting scared away from their guy, and I think if they gotten Laramie Tunsil, I don't think they would have regretted it, but they did get scared away from him. They did draft both at need and high-quality talent. They got the best guys available for their positions, minus Laramie Tunsil. I like the Jack Conklin pick for Michigan State, Kevin Dodd, defensive end from Clemson in the 2nd round, and Austin Johnson, the nose tackle out of Penn State. Overall, great picks, going to help their football teams. This division killed it. I give the AFC South an A+. Everyone in this division was a B+ or better. It's the only division that I could say that about. And kudos to the AFC South because everyone just killed it. Finally, let's go to the AFC West. The Denver Broncos I gave a C to. They addressed the quarterback need and the safety need, which were big for me. I love the Paxton Lynch pick, but he needs 3 full seasons before he's ready. If they're going to throw him in year 1, they're in trouble. I love Paxton Lynch. I was okay if the Rams got him in the 15th overall pick when they were sitting there, and it didn't look like they were going to get Goff or Wentz. Now I don't have to worry about that, but I still think Paxton Lynch is a great talent. He needs time. In the 2nd round, they got Adaman Gotsis, defense tackle from Georgia Tech. Good tackler, stout defensive lineman, but he's a run stuffer in a league that throws the ball, especially the AFC. I don't know how he'll pan out, which is why I give him a C. The Chiefs I gave a D. No one stands out, and they totally whiffed on the linebacker and safety in the deepest defensive draft in recent memory. In the 3rd round, they got Keavere Russell, the defensive back out of Notre Dame. He's their most notable pick. They probably could have gotten him in the 4th or 5th round, and they didn't get They didn't get a safety or a linebacker in this year's draft, and it was the deepest defensive draft in recent memory. You can't make those mistakes in a draft where you really have 4 rounds where you can't go wrong. And they did, and it's just embarrassing. The Raiders, everyone's high on them with the free agency, but I gave their draft a C. Not real impressed with their first 3 picks. And depending on what they do with Connor Cook, that could be a big deal. Good depth picks in the back end, though, in the 4th round specifically. Connor Cook, if he's going to be a backup quarterback and they're going to groom him, right move. David Carr could get hurt, and you want a guy that can come in that can win right away. Everyone needs a Jeff Hostetler, a Steve Young, a Vince Ferragamo when Pat Hayden was quarterback, or a Pat Hayden when Vince Ferragamo was quarterback. You need that guy that can come in and win games, and Connor Cook can, but he's no starter, and if they end up trading him for picks in the future, then that's really going to be a smart move on the Raiders' part. The Chargers. B. Best defensive end in the draft, best tight end in the draft, second best center in the draft, and the best fullback in the draft. Great job, San Diego. Not an A because later rounds appear to be busts all over the place. But in the first round, Joey Bosa, the defensive end from Ohio State. Second round, Hunter Henry, the tight end from Arkansas. And in the third round, they got Max Turek, the center out of USC, who I think was the 3rd best center in the draft. And they got him in the 3rd round, and he was the 3rd center to go. So I really like what the Chargers did. I think they did better than everybody else by leaps and bounds in that division. But overall, the division still did earn a solid C in my book. I think the division has room to improve, but the Chargers definitely did some impressive things to help their football team. In the end, though, the division is just a solid C. So that's it for my draft review. Hope you guys agree with my grades. If you don't, feel free to comment. And I'm going to head into the final segment of the show, which are my parting thoughts. All right, my parting thoughts. A few things that I want to talk about today. MMA BS commercial is what I labeled this one. So I'm listening to a local radio station out here in Arizona, and I don't know if it's a local group or if it's an ESPN group. I think they're NBC affiliated. I really get irritated with 1060. I can't listen to ESPN because I use a year's worth of education every hour I listen. And I really want to keep my master's degree level education where it is. I can't listen to 1060 anymore either because you've got this guy that just... I can't stand sports announcers that think they know everything about everything and think they can chime in. And he's the worst kind because he's a former lawyer, so he thinks he knows everything about everything. So this commercial is advertising this guy talking earlier in the day or yesterday, and he says how MMA, the reason people don't attack the MMA about concussions is because they make no bones about what they are. They punch people in the face, and you know what you're getting, and they don't shy away from it and hide from it. And the NFL does hide and shy away from it, which is why the NFL has a problem with concussions. That is 2 reasons why that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Number one, and probably most importantly, it doesn't change the fact that MMA has a concussion problem. Whether they want to, and they don't address it. Oh, well, it's boxing. They just get punched in the face and they choke people out. I told you, when somebody's knocked out, that's a grade 6 automatic. Okay, and that's how you win in the MMA. So I don't want to hear about humanity and, the safety of the players and this and that. You cannot. First of all, let me just say, too, I'm glad that I'm being heard. I'm glad that I'm being heard because nobody's called the MMA out but me that I've heard of. So this floating around on YouTube caught somebody's attention because they decided to run a story on it. So let me just tell you why you're dumb and why you're wrong. You're dumb because it still causes concussions. Period. I don't care if you advertise, hey, we cause concussions, which they don't say. They don't tell people what happens when you get knocked the frick out. Okay? Concussion. They don't say that. They have a contract, they sign it, which is what the NFL did for years until we as a society decided to insert tampons where our underwear should be as men and started going, I'm so offended. I can't handle it. You can't hit that hard. It's too rough. It is ridiculous. It's a man's sport. You don't like the contact, don't watch. But instead, these athletes are suing, winning billions of dollars, and everyone's jumping on board about how barbaric the NFL is. There's no sport more barbaric than the MMA. It is barbarism at its height. There is literally this much separation between the Coliseum and MMA. The only difference is they're not allowed to kill their opponent. And I promise you, if they made murder legal in that sport, it would do it. It is barbarism at its height. It makes boxing look like tea with your 30-year-old niece. It's barbaric. So to defend it while trashing the NFL still, even though this is more serious to the health of the athlete than football ever is. Ever. Ever. But they won't tell you that. Instead, he goes off and says, the MMA doesn't hide what it does. The NFL did. The NFL didn't hide what it did. The minute the lawsuit started piling in about concussions, the NFL said, we got a concussion problem. Sorry. Oops. And then they changed the rules to make it less entertaining. So what do you want from the NFL? So I lost it. I lost it, as you can tell. I lost it. You're going to promote this garbage, thug, barbaric, quite honestly, boring as frickin' crap sport to watch as if it's this great next thing over the National Football League. And then you're going to have the brass to say that they don't hide what they are. You're an idiot. So that flew me over the edge. The second thing that I want to talk about in my parting shot. Somebody had made a comment, and I'm not going to say who it is, but it's the same guy that I talked about last week, the Giants fan. Ended a conversation that we had, and I didn't respond to it, with the Rams are a dirty team. Guys, let me just tell you something right now. I hope we are considered a dirty team. I pray at night that when people play the Rams, their fans and their players on their favorite team go, we have to play the Rams. Can you double tape the knee? Can you double tape the ankle? Because I'm really concerned right now. Because if we've already gotten in your head before we've even taken the field, that's Oakland Raider football in the 70s. You're defeated before you take the field. And we have our home field advantage whether we're playing in the LA Coliseum or in your home stadium. So I want the label of a dirty team for two reasons. The first, which I just mentioned, that puts the fear in everyone. The second reason is because we live in a time and age right now where men are not men. They are very hairy women. And to compensate for their very hairiness, to prove their dismasculinity even more, if that's even a word, or to demasculize, I can't say the word, to feminize themselves even more, they shave their arms and their legs and their chest and their beards and their hair. If they have to, they'll put it in a little bun. And that's men today. Which is why so many men like me grow beards. Because we're like, where, dude, deal with it. This is a man's sport. It's like rugby, but not as intense because we wear pads in America. If you can't handle guys hitting each other at high speeds, causing great collisions, if your initial reaction to a big hit isn't, oh, yeah, baby, if that's not your initial reaction, why are you watching the sport? There's no reason to watch it. Go watch tennis. Go watch golf. Go shop for dresses. We don't want you here. You're not a man. So, I'm sorry, but for the masses, which you consider dirty, we, as true fans of the National Football League, consider old school football. Exhibit A is the AFC Wildcard 2016 between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you were one of those people that were like, oh my God, this is so violent and it's getting out of hand, I don't know what to do. It's terrible. If that's you, get out. You're not wanted. That was playoff football at its finest. It's supposed to be intense. It's football. So I get a little aggravated when I hear people say that my team is dirty, and then I go, oh, good. Because dirty in today's standards is just good football. You know, it's not dirty like in the 1970s where guys are trying to break knees and break backs and cause injuries. It's not dirty like that anymore. And I know what you're going to say. Oh, well, the New Orleans Saints and Greg Williams. Dude, bounties have been a part of sports since forever. And if you don't think bounties are going on today, you're an idiot. You try to hit the guy so hard that he can't continue to play. Cut the head off the snake, and you kill it. If you can injure through contact, that's not dirty, the best player on their team, you have now given yourself an advantage. I guarantee you, every time people hit Tom Brady, the hope is that he won't get up. Not a career ender, but out for the game. That's how you play the game. And if you can't handle that, don't watch. We don't want those people in the stands. We don't want those people driving this annoying voice of the sport. And they're all over ESPN. So that's all I want to say about that. The Rams are a dirty team. Good. That's my answer. Good. I hope they are. I hope people consider them a dirty team. And you know why now. Finally, let me give you guys some great news to go to. So I'm going to give you some history of the Rams in LA. The Rams record in Los Angeles is as follows. 30 winning seasons, 17 losing seasons, 2 500 seasons. 21 playoff appearances, the 49 years that they were in Los Angeles, 21 of those 49 years they made the playoffs. They were 12-20 in the postseason. That's not good, but still, that's 32 postseason games in 49 years. I'm okay with that. So let's hope that the return to LA is also a return to our consistently winning roots. That wraps up the show this week. Next week, guys, I'm really excited. Next week, I'm going to cover my top 10 80s quarterbacks. So please, next week's show, if you have any comments, this week if you have any comments, make them. But I'm really curious to see what you guys are going to think about my top 10. I don't know if I can do a conglomerate video montage like I did with the Rams' top 10 seasons. A, that took too long, and B, I'd really rather just kind of go through and maybe show a clip, if I can, a brief clip of that quarterback. But certainly I'm going to put up a text with my talking, stopping of their statistics because I think it's warranted. My top 10 quarterbacks are going to be very, very different than most people's top 10 quarterbacks of the 80s, and you might be surprised at the representation the Rams may have in that. So might be more than you think when it comes to 1980s quarterbacks. So hope you guys enjoy that show. I'm looking forward to it. Again, I hope you guys like this show. Any comments, feel free to comment. Otherwise, have a great day.